Kirsten and Dave, childhood best friends who drifted apart when Kirsten and her family moved due to her father's job, reconnected 5 years ago and are getting married in a few weeks. It was a very pleasant reunion. Kirsten and Dave, after not seeing each other in a decade or so, met again at a conference. As Kirsten was talking with other guests, she saw a man, very much like her childhood friend Dave, come into her line of vision. Curious, she excused herself from the conversation and discreetly made her way closer to the man. "Dave," she called softly, still unsure and didn't want to be embarrassed if she was wrong. Dave turned, and when he saw the woman standing in front of him, his eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. "Kirsten, is that you?" Dave exclaimed before moving close to envelop her in a tight hug. "It's a good thing you recognized me. I've gotten more handsome since the last time we met," he joked. "Well, that's true," Kirsten agreed good-naturedly. The two friends had a great time reconnecting at the event and got each other's numbers before they parted. Since then, the two friends kept in contact and eventually started hanging out more often before they decided to date. 4 years into their relationship, Dave proposed and Kirsten happily accepted. Now they are just a few weeks away from being husband and wife. They are both very excited, except there's one aspect of Dave's life that's giving him headaches: work. It's not exactly his tasks weighing on him, but a coworker. Dave and Janet work closely together as their tasks sometimes overlap, or if not, are at least interrelated. For this reason, only one of them can be away from the office at a time. So with his impending wedding, Dave blocked off weeks in his calendar, several days in preparation for his wedding day, and the honeymoon. He filed a leave of absence 8 months in advance. It was instantly approved, as he very seldom, barely any at all, used his leave credits since he knew he was needed at the office. Whenever he's away, even for a conference or anything of the like, people would still be calling him non-stop, as Janet can't seem to address such concerns. So, as a general rule, he never stays away or is absent if he can help it. That should have been the end of it. He filed for leave, it was approved, case closed. However, Janet knocked in his office one afternoon, 4 weeks before the wedding, asking if he really needed that much time off. "I was wondering if you could come in earlier, since I need to fly out for a cousin's wedding. Could you perhaps cut your honeymoon short?" Incredulous, Dave just stared at her. When he said nothing, Janet persisted. I don't think you should be away for that long," she said, as if Dave will be gone for a month instead of 2 weeks. Not knowing what to tell her, Dave remained silent, but his silence made Janet annoyed. "Speak up. I need to know that you won't be gone for the entire 2 weeks you said you would be," she said. "You owe me from before." "What do you mean I owe you?" Dave asked, confused. He and Janet used to cover for each other when there were emergencies, but he wasn't aware they were supposed to keep tabs on who owed who. "Remember that one day you called in sick, but I bumped into you at the grocery when I was out buying stuff for the office? Do you want me to tell the boss?" Janet said with a smirk, thinking that Dave would be swayed by her blackmail. Dave recounted that day in his head. He was sick, so he went to the doctor's to get checked. While his prescription was getting filled at the pharmacy, he went to the grocery to stock up on supplies he no longer has at home or is running out of. It was then that he bumped into Janet, who raised her brows at him and asked him if he was indeed sick before she rushed back to the office, murmuring to herself. Although Dave knew that Janet questioned his being sick that day, she never talked to him about it, so he thought it was forgotten. Janet accepted that he was actually sick, he thought. He never imagined that she was just keeping it close to her vest to use as blackmail material when need be. Unbothered, Dave shrugged nonchalantly. "Go ahead," he told Janet, which made the older woman even more annoyed. She thought Dave would be afraid, and would therefore grant her request of cutting his honeymoon short to accommodate her request. "Couldn't you just do this for me? You know, I treat you like a son," Janet tried again. She did treat him kindly, albeit too motherly. It was smothering and annoying at times. But all that changed since that day. The very day they bumped into each other at the grocery, on the day he called in sick. "I'm sorry, Janet, but I can't. We already made plans for those days. That's why I made the bosses know months in advance," said Dave, summoning all his patience. Janet got mad and said, "Watch me tell the bosses how you pretended to be sick then." Janet stormed out of the room, and Dave shook his head in dismay, still not threatened, but wanting to be ready just in case. Dave called the clinic and asked for his record, as well as the doctor's notes. Days passed, and he was not summoned by the bosses, but Janet continued to give him angry looks. 3 weeks before the wedding, Dave was working out of the office when his phone kept ringing. People had been calling him nonstop. He found out later that Janet directed all calls to him, telling the clients she didn't know the specifics and that only Dave could answer their queries. Pissed off, Dave told Joan, his immediate supervisor, that he would like to set up a meeting with her at her earliest convenience. The next day, Joan called him and told him that she had time in the afternoon. With doctor's notes in hand, Dave went to the conference room and waited for Joan. When she came in a few minutes later, Dave was surprised to see Mark, the department director, walk in next. "Hi, Dave. Mark wanted to hear what you had to say as well. Let me preface this by saying that Janet is threatening me to come to you about my absence a few weeks back. We bumped into each other at the grocery while I was waiting for my prescription to be filled at the pharmacy. Here's the doctor's note to prove that." Joan and Mark didn't even look at it. "We believe you. You didn't have to produce that. We have been working with you for a while now, and we never had a reason to doubt your words. So when you say you're sick, I believe that you're sick," Mark said. "Well, that's that. Now you said there are a couple of things you wanted to discuss?" asked Joan. Dave explained how Joan kept passing her responsibilities and tasks to him because she was mad at him for not accommodating her request. She kept claiming she didn't know how to do this and that, so he should accomplish them instead. When he was done, Mark and Joan shared a meaningful look. "We hear you, Dave. The higher-ups will have a meeting about this. We will keep you posted," Mark said vaguely. Unbeknownst to Dave, it wasn't the first time an employee raised concerns about Janet. Because he didn't know about this, Dave was surprised when the next day all the staff in the department were called in for a meeting, except Janet. Mark spoke briefly. "I just want you all to know that starting tomorrow, Janet won't be coming in for work. Her position was dissolved due to a reduction in force. Although that would be effective at the end of this term, which is by the end of this month, Janet will no longer be coming to work." Joan spoke up. "If you have any questions about who will be handling a specific task she used to handle, please refer to the email we sent you. If you have further questions, inform your direct superior." It turned out that throughout the years, Janet had been making others do a portion of her work that other staff in other positions had become so familiar with the task, they considered it a part of their own. Because of that, Janet's position is considered not essential anymore. Dave thought to himself, well, at least she'd get to attend her cousin's wedding with no issue or conflict in schedule anymore. Apparently, it was Dave's complaint that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Although the management didn't do anything every time the employees raised complaints about Janet, they were taking note of it. Then, at last, this most recent behavior she exhibited made them finally decide to let her go, as she is no longer of any help to anyone. 2 weeks later, while Janet stayed home, no longer able to fly out to her cousin's wedding because she is yet to find a new job, Dave and Kirsten were at the airport, waiting to board the plane on the way to their honeymoon. However, the flight was not the only thing Janet missed. Since she lost her job abruptly, Her rent is piling up, and she can barely sustain her needs. She can't borrow money from anyone in the firm, as she had alienated them all after constantly asking them to do the tasks she claimed she didn't know how to do or would need assistance with. However, they ended up doing everything for her. She didn't have long-time friends as well for the same reason. She is neither a good employee nor friend. Overall, she's broke, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. She can't seem to find a job, mainly because of her age. Employers seem to prefer younger applicants. That was when she realized how lucky she was to have stayed in her previous firm. If only she didn't do the things she did, she would still be there, and not on the verge of getting tossed out onto the streets because of non-payment of rent. A few weeks later, she finally received her last salary, so she immediately went to the grocery. There, like déjà vu, she bumped into Dave and Kirsten, who have just gotten back from their honeymoon. Upon seeing Janet, Dave was shocked how much weight she's lost. Embarrassed with what she did, Janet can't say anything. Dave, blissfully happy after the wedding, was instantly concerned and forgot what happened between him and Janet. He said, "Are you okay? You look pale and you're too thin." "Honestly, I had to skimp on food since I still haven't found a job," Janet said, eyes downcast. "Do you need help finding a job? Our wedding coordinator mentioned that she's looking for someone experienced to work on her books. Would you like me to set up a meeting? But know that whether she hires you or not would depend on you." Grateful, Janet turned to Dave and with tears in her eyes said, "Thank you, and I'm sorry. I'll do my best to live a better life now." Dave and Kirsten bid goodbye and went out of the store hand in hand. Janet looked in on them, smiling. "He's a very good man. He deserves to be happy and more."